Hello everyone, Brian with Walnut Farm Bees, talking about a topic again that seems like you can't talk enough about, and it's the subject of resources and feeding for your honeybee colonies. So first to note, there are many differing opinions on all of this, and there are many different approaches that work well, but know that some of the biggest factors tend to be the particular year and season, as well as location. There are occasionally times where poor management comes into the equation of what I must feed my bees, but location can be even a bigger factor. And location can change from year to year. So the ideal for me for bees going into the winter would be that they have plenty of honey stored so that they can get the whole way easily to April anyway, until late April, hopefully, when there starts to be some good nectar starting to come in. So that's the ideal. Just a colony, whether it's a single deep or deep and a half or double deep or double nuke or single nuke, just packed with resources by late fall so that they can easily make it over the winter on the resources that they've gathered. And as long as you have healthy bees, not much more is needed. And you can see that in this next clip that we show from one of our yards.
No insulation other than we put a small piece of Reflectix under the lid to keep the moisture going to the outside. Some colonies do have some screen across for mouse guard, and some places this year where we've had a lot of mice. Beyond that, reduced entrance, plenty of feed in all of these hives. Go through the winter. I'm in northern Pennsylvania right now, and they'll have enough feed to get through the winter. No problem. Healthy bees with good queens that have been checked for their mite levels earlier in the fall, and just had some oxalic acid to clean up any remaining mites, and so that they're strong and healthy going into the spring.
Okay, on the other hand, there are times where, for a variety of factors, whether it's a small colony that was just made, whether you made a lot of splits in a particular year with your bees, the weather was different than normal, or just a bad location as far as late summer and fall resources, all of that can factor into a situation where you need to address that if you're going to have enough food for over the winter. So the next tactic that I would typically take is that if you notice that there's not enough weight on for the winter, and I'm talking about late summer now, if you notice that and you're in an area that does not get any significant fall flow, and by the way, often the goldenrod flow, especially in south central PA, tends to be more pollen than nectar, so we can't always count on something like that. So if you're noticing that, you have time where you could mix up some either light or heavy syrup yourself to try to get those colonies up to weight for the winter. But by the time you get to late September, early October, usually is, and I'm talking south central PA, this might be earlier in some of the northern and higher elevation locations, or if you're in a different state. But in south central PA, at that point, is usually if the hives are too light, you need something that will put on weight very quickly. And products like ProSweet, which is much thicker than 2-to-1 syrup, will do that. And it can bring a colony up to weight very quickly. So that would be the second approach. And then the third approach is, if they're still not up to weight going into the winter, and especially by this time of year, you could look at it from the perspective of, if I want to save these bees, I'm going to have to feed them over winter. And typically that is not going to be any kind of liquid feed or anything that adds a lot of moisture to your colony. So you're talking about some kind of hard feed, whether it be sugar, whether it be sugar bricks, whether it be some kind of fondant blend. And there are a lot of decent products out there. Some of you know that I've used on some colonies the Dadant winter patties in the past, and that's a fine product. Bees will make it over the winter. I don't use it anymore. The primary reason is that there is still pollen and protein in those patties, even though a small amount. And while there's some debate over whether that's good or bad, I prefer not to add any extra protein, particularly if the honey had a lot of ash content or protein going into the winter. I don't want to add that kind of complication to my colonies. And so there's a number of other choices. Man Lake makes a winter patty mixture. You can get baker's fondant. You can make your own fondant. I'm usually way too lazy to be able to make the quantity of fondant that it would take, or candy boards that it would take, for quite a few bee colonies. You also have companies like Strong Microbials, which has a new fondant patty that has 8B's biologics, which that we like to use in the spring and summer. For small colonies, it has that in it, as well as probiotics. So that seems like a potentially decent patty. I don't know how much 8B's biologics is needed over the winter, maybe in late winter going to spring. And then of course, another popular one being the Hive Alive fondant, which we do carry here at the farm shop. And for most of my colonies, even if they're full, I do like adding one of these just as we start going into winter. I think the seaweed in the thymol in here does provide benefits. And of course, you could feed something like this going through the winter. But after the first patty or so, even on a small colony, and even small colonies do like the Hive Alive fondant patties. I wish the packaging was something different that you could put in the hive and there's nothing to remove. But this is the particular way that's designed, and I guess with how soft it is, that might be the reason for that. But as you can see in our next clip, even very small colonies and splits do enjoy this fondant.
Here's a small late season split. More cluster under there, but enjoying a little bit of the Hive Alive fondant cut in half to fit in a nuke.
Okay, so now getting down to the idea of, making something yourself. There are many recipes online for candy boards, for homemade fondant, and those take a lot of cooking and heating and stuff that I'm probably not willing to do. On the other end of the spectrum, we'd be talking about something like the mountain camp approach, where you're basically taking maybe newspaper and pouring sugar in there and maybe misting it to hold it in place a little bit. It's fine if it's cold enough and the bees are hungry enough, they'll probably eat some of that. I've seen more than not that approach, bees just simply hauling it out of the hives. But it is a very simple approach that many people enjoy using. My go-to when I know I have light colonies is typically somewhere in between, and it's towards the approach of a sugar brick, which is much harder than the mountain camp, much more firm. And you can see I've got one right here. Then the mountain camp method. Show you what sugar brick looks like, cut in half. All right, and it's more firm than mountain camp. Bees can easily eat that. Kind of like hard sand, can break it apart, crumble apart, put small pieces into your colonies very easily. And there are a number of recipes for that, and I think I have some recipes here. So one, you could make this with just sugar and water. And I've done that in the past, and bees are just fine on that. But usually I'm making a bucket size, so I'll start out with a bucket, just plain granulated sugar in there, 25 pounds. And into that I will mix about 4 1/4 to 4 1/2 cups of water. It doesn't have to be warm water. And then simply take a paint mixer, kind of paint mixer on a drill, and just keep mixing it at slow speed until it's evenly around to where it's like almost a damp sand feeling, but nothing is completely dry, and but it's not falling apart wet. So then you can pack it into some kind of a mold like this. These foil trays are reusable. I think they're Weber Grill drip trays. And I'll scoop it out of the bucket, put it in the tray, pack that down. If you put it in a warm and dry location for a few days, it'll then be all ready to go. And then you can even store these in a tote, which I often do just to have on hand. It's as simple then as putting it on top of a hive, maybe taking something like some size of a shim like this underneath the lid on top of the hive, put it right over the bee cluster is, and if they're starving, they'll come up and if they don't have enough food or whatever, they'll come up and eat that. Now I have for a couple of years mixed Hive Alive into it, and so I'll take the liquid Hive Alive, do the same recipe, and I will put again my 25-pound bag of sugar, about 4 1/4 to 4 1/2 cups of water, maybe a 4 1/3 if I'm using Hive Alive, and then I add a tablespoon of Hive Alive into this. Again, mixing it all around. Hive Alive, I like the thymol and I like the seaweed. There is lemongrass, some lemongrass in this, which I guess everyone loves using lemongrass. I kind of wish that wasn't in there because it restricts my use other times of year where you could potentially have robbing. During the winter, that's not really a concern. So I'll mix this in, and of course it does attract the bees to it. And this, you can see these bricks look pretty much white, but they do have sugar and the Hive Alive supplement in there as well. Another twist on that as well, if you want, there's a lot of research on probiotics, and I think the jury is still out on how beneficial it is. Like I have some Super DFM from Strong Microbials. They make a product called Extend. A lot of the probiotics you can't mix into syrup or get it wet. This product you can because of the type of bacteria, beneficial microorganisms that they're using. And you can just add this with the Hive Alive, putting it in, look, depending upon the amount, at the right weight. I think I figure there's a scoop in here. And it's roughly, I think it's 25 scoops or so that I will put into here into the mix. And again, it's just going to mix into there, blend it well, pack it into your pan, let it dry for a few days, not keeping it at extreme temperatures. When you're ready, put it in the colony. There's no real downside. The bees will eat this till spring. If there happens to be any left, you can always mix it back into sugar syrup in the spring if you feel like it's time to remove it from the colony. But I'll show you this process. Before we go any further and I start mixing, I just wanted to mention something else. And that's, we're adding a product called Hive Alive. I think the name can be a little bit misleading in that I do not in any way, shape, or form believe that adding these products is the determining factor in my bees living through the winter. That has been determined already over the past year. My nutrition and pest management practices as well as my genetics and other factors. This product and any of these supplements like Hive Alive or probiotics are potentially making my bees stronger and healthier in the spring, but not a determining factor on whether my bees live through the winter. Adding sugar bricks or fondant can help with a colony that doesn't have enough resources, but again, is not the determining factor between letting them have just a full hive of honey. So just wanted to clear that up before we continue. Okay, so I have here my 5-gallon bucket with the 25 pounds of sugar. And again, I'm going to take my 4 1/3 cup of water mixed with a tablespoon of Hive Alive. Just pour that in. Again, it does not have to be warm or hot, the water. And I'm just going to slowly start mixing. And this will take a while. Get the whole bucket mixed so that there's not any non-mixed granulated sugar in here. This will take a little bit of time, a little bit of effort. All right, so after a good bit of mixing, a few minutes of mixing, I cut some of that out so didn't have to watch my mixer turn, but know that it does take a little bit of time. You're then down to the consistency of a wet sand, and which is time where you can go ahead and pack it into whatever container you're going to use to help hold the brick together and allow it to dry. Again, I like these trays, drip trays from Weber or something similar like that. And you can use them over and over again, so worth the cost of buying, you know, a 30 pack of these. And then I'll just pack this down real nice and tight on a flat surface. I would set it down on the floor, pack it down real tight with my spoon. Set this somewhere reasonably warm and dry. We have a wood stove, so it tends to be the room where they go. After a few days of drying, you'll know when they're solid. You'll feel them and they'll feel hard. They'll come easily out of the pan. And then you can put them in a tote or something, or put them directly on the colonies if your colonies are ready for or need some winter feed. So I hope everyone's bees are doing well. And hope everyone has a nice holiday season. And if you're in the area and get a chance to stop by the farm shop sometime, stop by and say hi. Have a great day.